day I wake up tired. Leaving coffee doesn't help. I wanna set my alarm on fire, but I know that it wouldn't end too well. Would somebody please just help me? I can't quite explain what's happening to me. What's happening to me? Day in, day out, body's aching all the time now. Every day feels like Groundhog Day. Got me feeling like I'm Bill Murray. Would somebody please just help me? We're figuring out what's happening to me. What's happening to me? Maybe it's 'cause I'm growing old. Would somebody please just help me? We're figuring out, and I can't quite explain what's happening to me. We are the ones who don't know what we're fighting for. Give us a gun and send us all off to war. We are the ones who grow up in violent homes. We are the ones who don't know what's right or wrong. I know. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who were born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who just don't give a fuck no more. No more. We are the ones who don't know why we're losing score. Give them a badge so they could send us to the morgue. We are the ones who are scared to walk out the door. We are the ones who don't know what we're dying for. I know. We are the ones. We are the ones. We are the ones who were born into war. We are the ones. We are the ones.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest episode of I'm No Joe, your home for all things combat sports and the place where every armchair quarterback can feel like Eddie Bravo. The views and opinions presented on the I'm No Joe channel belong solely to the person expressing them, no one else. If we say it, that means we meant it. That being said, this show does contain adult themes, adult content, and general shit that you shouldn't be letting your kids intake. Be advised, viewer discretion is recommended. Proceed at your own risk. You've been warned. If it's Thursday, it's I'm No Joe. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of appropriate ages, to the latest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like Eddie Bravo. Today, as like most days, I have got a glorious panel here with me to break down all the shit-talking and shenaniganry, the fight announcements, and the fuckery and fun things that have fallen down the pipeline of combat sports since we saw you wonderful folks last. Before we get into all of that interesting goodness, first and foremost, gentlemen, how the fuck are you doing this fine evening?
I'm alive. We'll leave it at that.
I feel the same way a little bit. I mean, this week was a pretty damn good week at work. And we got some good shit done. Really enjoyed my job. But it's tiring as fuck working the long hours. I'm glad I'm alive, like Golf T said. I'm glad it's about to be the weekend. But I'm glad I'm here with you guys too.
Hell yeah. Glad to have you gentlemen aboard. So, as we like to do around here, kick things off at the top of the show with a little bit of news and recent events. Now, this season, we are not doing a recap show. Generally speaking, if something interesting or exciting happens over the course of the weekend of Punchy Kicky, I will try and throw up either a short on YouTube here or a quick little video on Instagram or somewhere. I will post some type of reaction to signify to the folks who just literally care about highlights what is actually worth paying attention. Otherwise, you could pretty much consider the weekend a wash, with the exception of a few things, this being one of them, where we start our new segment talking about things that evolved because of last weekend. So first and foremost, despite all of the shit talking, all of the long drawn out arduous contract negotiations, the agreement we talked about last weekend was confirmed. Contract was signed. One FC's heavyweight, Arjun Bowler, had just got himself a brand new shiny deal, stepped up to defend his belt against Anatoly Manikin, and got knocked the fuck out. Got beaten at his own game, got ground and pounded, and beat the fuck up, knocked out. So a little bit of irony there. The interesting thing there is that although Malikin is at heavyweight and took that belt from Buller, he also naturally fights at a lower 200-ish weight. So he fully intends to now turn around and try and attempt champ status with the 205 belt, and said, and I quote, "I'm going to chase Ryder to Ritter all the way down to middleweight. He will not get away from me no matter how much weight I have to cut." That's some serious fucking MMA rivalry, and I'm fucking here for it. You don't see a lot of that shit genuine and wholeheartedly without malice over on this side of the combat world. So it's nice to see some of those gentlemen still creating storylines, but not doing it in a douchebaggery kind of way. And speaking of interesting things on that side of the world, Ryzen, as if they don't have enough trouble, seems like they are always in the news for something. This week, their featherweight champion, or should I say former champion, Kleiber Koiki, I believe is how he pronounces his name, missed weight not once but twice last weekend for his defense of his belt, and subsequently was stripped of it. Ryzen just can't seem to catch a break. Not that they really work very hard to, but just interesting. The double irony of this situation is that after Mr. Koike missed weight twice and was stripped of his belt going into the fight that still proceeded. He turned around and did a little mini press conference, I guess, and tried to dismiss the fact that he had missed weight for more talk of him hoping that it was Ryzen that Anderson Silva signs with for his potential retirement fight, because he would love to share a card with such a professional legend as Anderson Silva. The man says immediately after missing weight and getting stripped of his fucking belt. Like I said, Ryzen just can't seem to not shoot themselves in the foot. So interesting world over there. That being said, I'm not sure who all did, but if you did watch the PFL event last weekend, you probably already know what I'm about to talk about. But for those of you who didn't, there was a bout last weekend between Nathan, I believe is how I pronounce his name, Schultz, and Rafael Manifiao. Training partners, lifelong friends. One of them is the literal godfather to the other's daughter. Very open about their friendship and, you know, public about how they were not excited to have to potentially fight each other in just a regular open season match, not for like playoffs or for the actual $1 million in the title, just a regular fucking means nothing match. Seems like bad matchmaking more than anything. But that being said, they made the match. The gentleman signed the contract. They both showed up to fight. And what they produced last weekend, I am not 100% certain could arguably be called a fight. It was, in fact, 15 minutes of a thing, start to finish, with bells to indicate where rounds would have normally been adjudicated. But the action that was shown was definitely two gentlemen who had zero interest in doing any damage or trying to actually push forward or really put on an actual fight against the other. That being said, the PFL announced that due to their poor performance, which is part of the contract signed by all fighters entering the PFL, and not giving their all, which I agree is kind of a sketchy fucking subject to be determined, but if you watch the fight, you'll understand where the PFL came from here. They turned around and suspended both fighters for the rest of the season, which this essentially was the last event of the season, but essentially suspended both of them for the rest of the season and stripped them both of all points. Words live. Stripped them both of all previous points accrued in their season, meaning that Natan Schultz is officially out of the playoffs, and Shane Burgos, who did not score enough points in his fight earlier, or later on in the evening rather, would then subsequently be in, even though he originally would not have been. So there is all kinds of controversy around this, and I honestly see it from both sides here. I think that is absolutely, from an optics point of view, a shitty thing to do. You had two guys that you agreed the results of the winning, or the results of the end of that fight, points accrued, go forward, and if one of them should get enough points, they go into the playoffs. Well, that's what happened. It wasn't fucking fun. It was clearly suspicious enough that a lot of people thought it might have actually been a genuinely rigged fight. Athletic Commission investigated, allegedly, I say with rabbit ears for those of you just listening, allegedly investigated the fight, found no grounds to overturn the results of the match, but PFL, despite that fact, said, no, we could clearly tell this was not the best performance either of these gentlemen could give, and it seems like they literally just tried to coast it out against each other, and whatever points may come, lead them into the season, and they ain't fucking having it. So all kinds of craziness happened. Both of these gentlemen are now suspended. Their points have been stripped. Shane Burgos now into the playoffs, despite him not having enough points from his actual match earlier to get himself there. So it's all kinds of fucking craziness on the side of the PFL house right now. But not to be outdone, UFC gonna UFC. So I do have to apologize. I accidentally mislabeled the episode last weekend, Vegas 76, which is actually this weekend's episode. Last weekend was UFC on ABC 2 from Jacksonville, which is why it was so fucking stupidly early. But That being said, in Jacksonville itself is within the state of Florida. And if you've been watching this show alone for any period of time, or combat sports in general, specifically the UFC, you already know where this one's going. Yes, indeed, the Florida State Athletic Commission do be stepping on their own dick hard and with golf shoes. So there were 3 categories of medical results from last week's UFC card down in Jacksonville on ABC. There was the first, Bruno Silva, all by himself, getting a 30-day suspension. There's the second, Gabriel Santos, all by himself, getting a 60-day suspension. And then there's the third category, Radzikabov, Rebecki, Turnman, Tafa, Hibas, Emmett, and Tapuria, all indefinitely suspended until cleared by a Florida State medical professional. There are 2 things you can count on when the UFC travels. Texas referees and judges are going to get calls laughably wrong, and they're just going to get swept under the fucking rug. And Florida State Athletic Commissions are going to give insultingly ridiculous medical suspensions. Well, ding-a-ding-ding-ding. We're here for column B today, motherfuckers. That being said, we do actually have some very, very exciting fight announcements this week to talk about real quick here. Try and run down them fairly quick here. First and foremost, August 4th, 15 years in the making, taking place on Jorge Masvidal's Game Bred FC Bare Knuckle MMA. The rematch folks have always wondered about. Junior Dos Santos and Fabricio Verdum. Words are live hard sometimes. This is one of those, both of these gentlemen, I believe, technically speaking, were retired, or at least retired from competition, and are seemingly to be coming out of retirement for this particular match. I'm not sure how exciting it's going to be. It kind of feels like digging up skeletons to marionette them in what could have been a fun fight, but we will see in a little over a month's time. That being said, this could be very, very interesting, to say the least. But that same evening, later on, will be the PFL's first playoffs down in San Antonio, the featherweights and the light heavyweights. Some very interesting matchups. We will talk more about those as we get closer to that card, but excuse me. Interesting to see the PFL taking their first playoffs down to Texas, literally after I just get done mentioning about one of the things you can always count on with Texas. So we'll see how that plays out. That being said, a little over a week after that, August 12th, UFC Vegas 78 from the Apex will see the return to the cage of one Cub Swanson versus Mean Hakeem Dawodu, and I am definitely down for that fucking fight. That is another one of those that the fight itself, in my opinion, warrants a full crowd, but I also understand why they're going to put that one in the Apex as well. So we'll see how that shakes out. But either way, I think the fight itself is going to be awesome. 2 weeks after that, August 26th, UFC Singapore. They are stacking that fucking card, boys and girls. We got a pair of announcements for the Singapore card this week that are going to make it a little more delectable, in my opinion, here. The first one, Tyler Santos versus Aaron Blanchfield. They're throwing her in the deep end. It's sink or swim now, sweetheart. Your mouth has written yourself some checks since your last fight that it's time to either cash or get put in debt for. And apparently Tyler Santos is the first path down, or excuse me, the first stone down that path. So we will very shortly see if Erin Blanchfield is as good as some folks think she is, or if she literally has just talked herself into the position that she is in, because the money come due, as they say. Tyler Santos coming to collect. The other one that they announced for that Singapore card that I think is very interesting, maybe not as interesting as Blanchfield Santos, but very interesting nonetheless, given the current status of things. The rematch that I don't know that anyone was actually even asking for or wondering about, but we're getting it anyway in Singapore. Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann 2. Now, I'm not really sure why we're getting this, considering how the first one went, and that Anthony Smith is still seemingly leaps and bounds above Ryan Spann, and Spann hasn't really done anything remarkable to warrant earning a rematch against that situation, in my opinion. But as we often say, UFC go to UFC, so here we go. They're sending Anthony Smith over to Singapore to try and bring a little name value to that card. That being said, couple weeks after that, September 2nd, we have got confirmation now, will be the UFC Paris Fight Night as of right now. It is not set as a pay-per-view. It is set as a fight night, even though it is in Paris, but they added another interesting fight to that card. Manon Fiorot fighting in Paris, which makes absolute fucking sense, against Rose Namajunas, making her official debut, moving up to 125. Again, one of those situations where the UFC is just throwing the lady right into the deep end. Granted, we have seen Rose basically dismantle all of 115. So giving her a shot at someone like Manon Fiorot, who is a top prospect in 125 right out of the gate, is not unreasonable. And if Rose Namajunas can go out and do Rose Namajunas things to Manon Fiorot in Paris, you better believe she's jumping to the top of that fucking title shot conversation, and there will be no denying it given her resume. So that's going to be a very interesting one to keep an eye on. We got another pair here for another one of those strange fight nights, but it's a big card. 2 weeks after Paris, back to Vegas in the T-Mobile Arena for UFC Fight Night. Well, now we know why they're doing a fight night in the T-Mobile Arena, which seems a little odd because they've announced the headline and the co-headline for this card. They are going to headline Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 2, the rematch, co-main evented by Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Kelvin Gastelum at welterweight. We have heard that they have had lots of problems getting Shavkat fights at welterweight. Nobody wants to sign on that dotted line, and I don't blame them. There's still a lot of holes in his game that could potentially be exploited, though, and Kelvin Gastelum seems to think that he can get it done. Now, whether he can do that and make 170 in a meaningful fashion, we'll see. That could potentially be a real big fucking oof, but we'll find out real soon. That being said, following last weekend's PFL loss, TKO loss to Clay Collard, who moves on to the playoffs now, UFC and Bellator and PFL veteran Stevie Ray has now officially retired from MMA for a second time. He had previously retired, but understandably, that $1 million summons from the PFL lured him back in. He gave it another run. He gave it a hell of a try. Didn't look terrible, but clearly just not quite able to make it to that level, and decided, you know what, we're just going to move on with our lives. And again, this is a situation where we're seeing a gentleman decide to take the gloves off at a point where he can still form complete sentences and enjoy time with his family, with plenty of opportunities to financially establish himself outside of combat sports and not getting punched in the head anymore. And you can't be mad at that. So tip of the cap, carry on, my wayward son, and we'll see you, say la vie, off into the sunset with you, Stevie Ray, for the second time. That being said, Braxton Smith, one fight into the UFC, got his ass kicked by Paca Porta fairly thoroughly. Not once, not twice, but 3 times USADa'd. Questionable, concerningly high levels of exogenous testosterone, 2 out of competition and an in-competition sample from the Paca Porta ass whipping, all 3 with concerningly high levels of exogenous testosterone present in samples, confirmed, brought to Mr. Smith, acknowledged, and a 2-year suspension has officially been handed down. He will not be eligible again to fight until the early portion of 2025. For a heavyweight who is not that high of a prospect, that is essentially a death sentence to that man's career of his absolute own doing. So not sad to see somebody get caught that many fucking times in that short of a period of time being that stupid, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Please move along. We've got other people behind you to test. Speaking of other people behind you, sadly, we got confirmation just a little while ago this afternoon before we went live this evening that officially MRI results are in, and Henry Cejudo has withdrawn from the UFC 292 match against Chito Vera. There were a lot of people, including myself, who got real skeptical when Henry started chirping back at Chito's social media talks, saying the contract isn't signed yet, calm down. Seemed like a pretty good indication. Well, now we see why. So seems like Henry knew he was hurt and was just trying to decide if he really wanted to tough through it for Chito or not, and has decided he's not going to go for it. Whether we see Henry actually retire or not, there's no telling, but he has said that he has got a 50% tear in his left shoulder and that he is going to undergo surgery to get it repaired. Excuse me. That being said, I and several other folks that I have seen really do hope they decide that this is as good a time as ever to let Jan step in Henry's place. Chito versus Jan, I think, is the fight to make to keep Chito on that card, to get Jan either back into relevance or escorted permanently out of the top conversation. Either way, great fucking fight. Saves the fucking pay-per-view that Henry wasn't really going to do much for to begin with, honestly. And it makes a really fun fight. So, I don't know. I hope we see it. We'll see. Excuse me. Last one here. A little bit of silver lining to a very dark story that we talked about last weekend. Chris Lencioni, who suffered a cardiac arrest on the mats in training, is in the ICU. Has officially had a video released from his wife over the last couple days, making some notable progress. He was essentially coming out of a coma at this point and is starting to relearn all of his basic motor functions. The video is of them getting him to track objects with his eyes. They use his wife. They get his wife to try, or get him to track his wife with his eyes, get him to purse his lips up as she comes in to give him a kiss. And then you can see at the end of it, a big fucking smile slowly creep across his face as he acknowledges what is happening right there. And it is fucking awesome to see obviously we fucking hope that Chris keeps continuing to make fucking progress like this. Keep fucking pulling on for you, dude. Now, unfortunately, we can't end the show, or at least this segment, on good news like that because Dana White won't let us. Sadly, this week, as in every week so far this year, and predictably probably every week throughout the rest of the year, we've gone one more week without Dana White having to face any fucking consequences whatsoever for slapping his wife over New Year's Eve down in Mexico. And no, contrary to Dana fucking saying so, having to live with the knowledge that it happened is not adequate punishment. So unfortunately, we've made it another week, and that motherfucker has managed to weasel out of actual culpability. So we are here talking about it once again. But that is all I've got for this week for news. Is there anything that either one of you gentlemen have that I might have missed this week?
Nothing.
Ugh. Okay. So, assuming he's not dead hanging over there, that'll bring us to the point in the show where sometimes us old heads can get a little bit caught up in how and what kind of combat sports we consume. Get you the best way I can describe it is to develop a set of blinders for what you're picking up. If you watch a lot, you generally tend to develop a way and what you want to watch, and that unfortunately can lead you to missing new and up and coming fighters and events and hell even organizations at this fucking point in the game that you otherwise might be privy to if you paid a little closer attention to some of the up and coming things. Well, we just so happen to have ourselves a bona fide young person who keeps track of all the newest up and coming fun things, fun organizations, fun fighters for you to keep your eye on. That way you don't have to wait until they're already fighting for the spotlight to know who the hell they are. It makes watching combat sports a little more fun, in my opinion, to get a little more knowledge about the newcomers before they're big stars. We wrap it all together in a little segment around here that we call Slows, Cans, and Contenders. I think he's over there.
Slow.
Christian.
Christian. Fairy godmother.
Christian. If you don't eat your meat, you can't have any pudding.
Overtime's a killer.
It is. I don't know if his camera's frozen or if he's asleep, though.
I see the head bobbing with the breaths, so I think he's passed out.
Penny, if you can hear us, kick Christian.
Nope, I think they're both done.
I think they're cooked. All right. Well, there's definitely some cans. There's definitely some contenders on this card, but we'll give the brother a break here. Just a moment. Let's see if I can post.
Here, I'll help you out. Number one can on the card. Yana, Kunitskaya, or currently Santos, whatever. Doesn't matter if you've had a name change or not. Still fucking can. Period. What she's doing ranked in the top 10 of featherweight, I have no fucking clue. Contender. I'm going to go ahead and say Damir Ismagulov. Still sitting in those lower ends of the lightweight, but I'm still behind the Kazakhs, even though our Beatles boy got his ass whipped. You know, that just tells you the power of the Beatles haircut is not the same as the power of the mullet. So there you go. There's my canon contender for this week. Also, did not watch fucking Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, likewise. And ironically, every week other than this week, I have actually watched. I won't watch the bullshit of the actual show, but I will go in and watch just the fight at the end to watch that, other than just the highlights, because I feel like they deserve to watch the fights, not so much just the recaps for those boys. They put the work in. I did not this week because I already had seen on social media that it was Brad Katona and that Michael Chandler basically ignored him. Katona had come to him several times going, are we going to watch tape? Are we going to try and work on something specifically, knowing exactly who my fight is up against 2 weeks out? Like, what are we doing here? Like this, I've already been in the UFC. This is my chance to get back in. Like, I want to do this properly. And Chandler's like, oh yeah, well, our coaches have watched all the tape we need to. We'll drill some stuff with you. And Katona says, we're a little over a week out. We're already almost too close to be introducing anything new. I still haven't seen a single tape on my opponent. I don't know what I should be training for style wise. I feel like we're really dropping the ball here. And Chandler literally kind of brushes him off. Like, we knew that this season wasn't going to be great to begin with, but at this point, I'm glad that it's starting to show a little bit of Chandler's douchebaggery as well. Everybody kind of knows what you're getting. You know what to expect at this point when you bring Conor McGregor in, especially to a show like The Ultimate Fighter, where we all know at this point he still hasn't signed a contract to fight Chandler at the end. He's essentially doing this for free promotion for Conor, Proper 12, and Forged Out. I think Chandler tries so hard to have that all-American good guy fucking attitude bullshit. And this, at least this last week, has exposed a little bit of that. I'm not saying Katona is a surefire winner. I'm not saying Katona could do this, if he was on Team Conor. What I'm saying is it's showing Chandler isn't what he pretends to be either. And I appreciate that. Other than that, fuck that show, because they're definitely lather, rinse, and repeating every other fucking season without injecting a slight bit of fucking newness into it here. But I absolutely agree on your call. Santos is fucking ridiculous. And the only reason that fight is even actually happening is because Santos's original fucking opponent bailed out and they got Carol Hosa to step in at last minute under the terms that they would have it at a featherweight to keep the featherweight division still technically alive and on board, even though Amanda Nunes has retired. So good on Carol Hosa for single-handedly trying to hold the ladies featherweight division up by her lonesome at a rank number 9 in a division I believe only has 10 women in it. So good on Carol Hosa. Yeah, Santos is full on Kando. Carol, even in short notes, I'm pretty sure is going to step up and beat the shit out of her. My can officially this week, though, Kevin Lee. He has spent every single moment, which is more than he deserves, of his time this week in front of the cameras and the microphones, bitching about the fact that he is the premier prelim fight, that he is the main card bait dangler, if you will. The premier spot on the prelims, no matter how good or bad, generally gets a good amount of eyes and is an opportunity to get some well-deserved fucking attention. But Kevin Lee doesn't see it that way. He feels that he should automatically be on the main card after 3 fucking years on the sideline, and 0 in that 3 years to actually deserve the contract that the UFC graciously gave back to him. So fuck that. I think where Kevin Lee fits into all this is on the goddamn prelims. And I hope that funky named, weird looking liar about his resume motherfucker that he's stepping in across from beats the shit out of him for real. And we all get to watch it. I think that would be funny as hell. I'm a petty bitch and I don't care, but fuck Kevin Lee. Ironically, though, my contender for this card, I have been foiled by this pick before, and I don't care because I still think there is potential there. The Queen of Mean, Ariane Lipski. I think she has got what it takes to hold down. I'm not saying she's going to take that belt anytime soon, but I'm saying she is essentially the top 15 gatekeeper for the ladies. I think that they are trying to push Melissa Gatto up based off of mediocre performances. I think that Lipski is potentially capable of way more than Gatto is, and I think that this is her chance to fucking shine and do it. And they put her on the goddamn main card to do it. They kept Kevin Lee on the fucking prelims, and they put the ladies on the fucking main card with 0 rankings between the two of them. I love it. I hope that she fucking shines, that she puts on a badass fight. That being said, though, excuse me just a moment.
Agree wholeheartedly with both of those. We know where Kevin Lee fits in to all of this. The fucking sidelines.
Yeah, I think that at this point, honestly, he should be gracious that he's getting the fucking premier prelim spot, because if I or a lot of fucking people had our way, he would be buried in the second premier fight, or second prelim fight rather, where no one genuinely gives most of a fuck. But they got him in that premier spot. He's gonna get attention for it. So that's what I said. I hope the other dude beats the shit out of him. That dude's got a weird situation under his own, and I'm not gonna go into. But yeah, I hope he gives Kevin Lee the ass whoop, but he spent 3 years running away from. So we'll see. That being said, though, that'll bring us to the point where we have got a normal situation for a podcast would be to throw your B-rolls in here, your sponsorships, your bullshits, your funky fucking ad plugs. We don't do any of that shit here. If you would like to help around here, patreon.com/I'm no Joe. For as little as $1 a month, you can get your name at the end of every broadcast on this channel, and we appreciate it. It helps us do what we do. This month, though, I would ask you keep your fucking dollar. I don't want you on the Patreon this month. If you've got $1 to spare this month, we've got a friend of the show here named Ed who is fighting cancer and could use that dollar a hell of a lot more than I could. I would ask that you kindly send that on to his way. If you've got a spare dollar, the link down to the GoFundMe to help Ed out is down in the description. We got your back, Ed. Fuck cancer. That being said, that'll bring us to the point in the show where we've got a segment that requires its own individual disclaimer. Tapology.com does not in any way, shape, or form support, endorse, or sponsor the I'm No Joe podcast. Yet. That being said, Tapology.com does offer you the ability to create a free account on their website and make picks in a fantasy style way. Similarly to what we do on the show here, we've actually created a group on Tapology.com called I'm No Bookie, or Group 965, however you need to search it. It is open to the public. You are more than welcome to make yourself a free account. Hop on to Tapology.com, find our group, join. We will throw you right in there, and you can put your picks head to head with ours and literally let your predictions do your talking just like we do. We recap all the fun that goes on in our group in a little segment that we call Tapology with TJ.
All right. So I'm going to dive right into the fucking deep end of this right away. Number 1, fuck overtime. 2, fuck early fight cards. 3, for those of you that have not, please join Group 965 or the I'm No Bookie group over on Tapology. It's a good time. Now, with that being said, after you join, do yourself a favor. Remember to put your fight picks in a timely fashion. When working overtime and other things in life pop up, sometimes you forget. You have to put them in at the last minute. It fucking happens, but that is not an excuse. So, now down to business here. I'm going to start right from the fucking bottom, because the reason why I gave that big prefix for everyone there, overtime kicked my ass. Shit with life got in the way. I forgot to put my picks in on Friday. Saturday, I am working overtime yet again. Guess what? I realized at 10:28, well, I'm working on my work computer, so I don't have access to my personal computer at the time, that I have not put my picks in. It's nice to have a fucking phone. By the time I got logged into the site, I decided, fuck it. I'm not even going to bother taking my dick out to trip over it. I'm just going to chop it off, throw that motherfucker clean into the wood chipper, because there was no point in trying to salvage this. When I say salvage it, I mean, I literally just went down the list and picked left, right, or left, right, or whatever the fuck I did and hit send on my picks. So I knew shit was not going to go well. Lo and behold, not to my surprise, or probably anyone else's once they figured it out, it did not go well. My random, you have 60 seconds to get your picks in, came out with a total of 5 correct, which was way more than I thought by the way I was quick picking everything, rather than using my notes in my brain. Ended up with a whopping 250. Now, caveat, to that. I could have had more points, but I didn't get to choose decisions or any of that other shit. So it fucked me. And to be honest, the picks that I made, I don't even know who I was picking when I was making them because I was just fucking flying through the list. So like I said, no excuses. I lopped that motherfucker off, threw it into the wood chipper, out it shot, bottom of the rung I get. Now on the other side, you have people who get their shit in on a timely manner and do fantastically well. Our sleepy poo, Mr. Christian over there, has decided he was going to take home the gold last week. Fucking 8 of the 13 fights correct. 515 points. Doubled my score. Not surprised. Had anybody else decided they were going to trip over their dick, and it did look like there was a couple that were really fucking vying for it. It would have been bad because I'm not going to lie. I would have talked a lot of stupid shit today had that happened. But, you know, here we are. I'm hoping with the medical technology where we are today, I can gather up all those pieces after they've shot out of the wood chipper, piece it back together, and hopefully have a better week next week. Or this weekend, as it were. So, if you're not in the group, come join us. Group 965. I'm no bookie over on Tapology. It's worth it. You're going to hear some crazy shit. You might even trip over your dick. But just don't do like I did and lop that son of a bitch off and just throw it in the wood chipper right away, because it's not worth it. To be honest, I think I would have been better off not putting my picks in, but there was other stuff on the line, so I had to do some sort of pick. And that still didn't work out in my favor, which congrats to fucking Vindog the Booty Hog over there and fucking taking home our little small manifesto that we've got going on over there. Now, with that being said, again, join the groups. We're going to hop right into odds because this week we actually have some fucking crazy odds to talk about, which is wild considering what we've been dealing with lately. So we're going to start by saying there are a few that are flip-ems on here. And by that, I mean about 4 or 5 fights that are pretty much flip-ems, pick-ems. But there are a bunch of other fights on this card this week for the Strickland versus Magomedov that are not. Now, this one I'm going to call borderline. Benoit Saint-Denis is Ismael Bonfim, one half of the Bonfim brothers. If you don't know who the Bonfim brothers are, they have come into the UFC like fucking lightning in a bottle right now. I think they have the odds right on this by the way that the Bonfim brothers have come in. They have Ismael coming in as a minus 300 favorite over a Benoit Saint-Denis as a plus 240 underdog. Not quite a really lopsided odds, but it's wider than the coin flips that I see for the other 4 or 5 fights on the card that are like that. Now, one of our other fucking good spread margins here, Elves Brenner and Grom Kudalidze. They have Kudalidze coming in as a minus 650 favorite over Elvis Brenner being a plus 425 underdog. There's some pretty wide odds and some relative unknowns. And I say relative unknowns loosely. Some of you who've been around watching for a while or are a little deeper into this are going to know who they are. But both of them are still pretty fucking green. So those are some pretty wide odds. I kind of like the idea where that's headed. Another one, our fucking wider margin ones, not quite as wide as those last two, but this is closer to the pick'em side, I guess. Ivana Petrovic, Luana Carolina. We've got Petrovic at a minus 225 favorite and Luana Carolina at a plus 185 underdog. This is on the low end of that spectrum where I say not, it's a little bit more than a coin flip, but I've been kind of ballparking all those together lately because there's been a lot of that on cards.
I also
another
feel
one-
like that one's a little bit of the Molly curse. I feel like that fucking meatball elbow really tainted Luana's fucking pro, because she was a fairly highly touted prospect until that fight, and that fucking Molly elbow seems to have just completely sapped all the fucking wind out of her sails. I think that's got a lot to do with those odds, in my opinion.
I think it very well could there. One other one that I wanted to mention that was kind of on the cusp here was Bruno Ferreira and Ruzbov. I fucking can't manage that fucking name. I'm not even gonna try. They've got Ferreira as a minus 225 favorite against a plus 185 underdog. And this is what I'm reading off here is off of BetMGM right now. So this is all through MGM. Know that it subject to change depending on which one you're at, but they're usually pretty similar across the board to everywhere else. So that's the other one that's kind of on a wider set margin. Now, with that being said, we finally got a fucking crazy one. We have one crazy one on the whole fucking card. Joe Anderson Brito and Weston Wilson. They have Joe Anderson Brito as a minus 1,400 favorite over Weston Wilson at a plus 800 underdog. Can we say a little crazy? Now, if you really want to get a good bang for your buck, you go over to FanDuel, though, because they have Joe Anderson Brito as a minus 1,800 favorite and Weston Wilson is a plus 880 underdog. So that's where you're going to get your super wide margin on this one. But just know, again, relative unknowns. I think this was a last minute replacement too, if I remember correctly, which part of the reason why that fucking odds can be that wide, but we've known lately that they're afraid to make wide odds on things. So there's probably a reason for it, but it might not be a bad idea to, throw a tenner down on Weston Wilson. You might make $80 off of it, It's worth a shot. Or you pull some Drake shit and decide to throw 1,000 on him, fucking easy 8,000 if he wins, But then again, don't expect to fucking be sending out fucking watches to people when you start winning bets like that. So that's the widest margin on the card. So know that there are some decent ones worth betting this week, even though the odds are kind of wide on some of them. There's a good chance they could go the other way just based on the people that are involved in those. So, yeah, we finally got a fucking wild one. And it's not even a fucking world breaker that's getting that kind of wide odds, which is fucking absolutely crazy.
Thank you for that, sir. Much appreciated. So, before we dive too much deeper into the craziness that is this weekend's UFC Vegas 76, if you are looking to get your punchy kicky punch card filled, this weekend has got plenty of opportunities for you to do just that. Starting in just a few hours from now, 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Too fucking early, in my opinion. 1 FCs, 1 Friday night fights, because they're on the other side of the globe. 23 kicks off. 3 MMA bouts, 1 kickboxing match, and 8 Muay Thai matches, a literal full mixed martial art broadcast. If you need to get your breakfast fight on, there you go. One's got you covered. Not a lot of names, a lot of casual folks will recognize, but I promise you a lot of entertaining fights will go down on that card. Now, in the vein of crazy cards, I would be remiss as a fight lunatic if I did not tell all of you fine folks that tomorrow evening, going down at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, available through FightCircus.tv for free to watch, Fight Circus 7, Lock, Stock, and 2 Smoking Sausages takes place. We have got all of the glorious goodness you have come to expect from a Fight Circus card. We have got Wheel of Violence. We have got Indian leg wrestling. We have got foot in tire championships. And we have got guest Tyson Fury himself with special guest pick main event, either John Nutt versus 2-on-1 again, like he's done in the past, which is spectacular. He stays business casual and just gets his fucking hand wrapped and gets in there, and it's glorious. Or because earlier in the night is Bob Sapp versus Sanchai in a craziness match. There is also an option for the main event, if Tyson Fury should so decide, to be the return of Sloppy Balboa, and get Tyson to watch Bob Sapp and Rampage Jackson in that glorious Siamese shirt, taking on the man, the myth, the legend, John Nutt himself, and a partner to be thrown in the other side of his giant shirt. Just absolute mixed martial art chaos. I believe there is also an MMA indoors living room martial arts combat match in a ring. There is a 4-way British knuckle duster match going on. It is just all of the goofiness that you expect Dana White to say, we'll never make those fights. John Nutt will. Thailand loves that shit, and it is glorious. So thanks to Zombie Dust for kicking Fight Circus some money and getting them back in it. We have got a glorious Fight Circus 7 lined up tomorrow evening. I'm very fucking excited about that. But first thing Saturday morning at 12:45, Cage Warriors 156, one of the best feeder organizations to the UFC, in my opinion, where a lot of the favorite stars, Paddy Pimblett, Conor McGregor, Ilya Topuria, came directly from. So interesting card. A couple names that folks will recognize. Darren the Dentist Stewart headlining that card, getting back after it overseas. Nice to see him still kicking ass and taking names, getting a main event fucking shot. Good card overall. Real good card overall. But that will bring us to Saturday evening. Main card back at semi-normal time, starting at 6 p.m. Central. Better than the ABC 10 a.m. cards, in my opinion. But that being said, this is another one that it essentially is the International Fight Week next week hangover card. It's a fight night where they kind of threw semi-recognizable names and semi-attachable attention span gathering matchups onto, but not so much that they spoil the fact that next weekend is going to be a gigantic pay-per-view card loaded with fucking crazy fights. But we'll talk about next week when we get to next week. This week, though, I am curious. There are everything from walrus slap fights to lady prospects to, potential title contenders with a win to just trying to get a goddamn number by their name fights. So with all the mixed up insanity, I'm curious if you've got one this week that seems to be flying under the radar with the mass shotgun spraying of fights we got on this card.
I think the one that does fall under the radar for me is what I mentioned a little bit ago. Ismael Bonfim and Benoit Saint-Denis.
Yes.
Like I said, the Bonfim brothers have been lightning in a bottle. But they're not getting the coverage that they should be getting currently. If they gave that a little more coverage, I'm just saying, they have potential superstars there. Because the way they came in and wrecked house on the same card, brother violence, just beating the shit up, dude. It makes me think Streets of Rage, fucking brothers beating the shit out of everybody and just going through it. Get on the Bonfim train, enjoy it, ride it out. I will not lie, I'm not going to be fully on board with it yet, but the way that they come in as lightning in a bottle, I think there's a fuck ton of potential there, and the UFC is missing the mark by having Adriana Lipski and Melissa Gatto after that fight. I think they could have very well much moved that up one more fight there, or at least given them the premier prelim spot so they had a little more shine.
I can definitely agree with that. Ironically enough, though, from the opposite side of it, though, I am one of those open fucking haters that I think the Bonfim brothers are fucking more hype than they are talent. And I think it's just a matter of time until we see the same thing play out with them that we've seen with every other pair of siblings, whereas one seemingly ends up with the gift of gab, with the other one ending up with the actual fighting talent. And I don't think both of them are as good as they're playing off to be. I think they have basically talked themselves into being sold, as I say with air quotes for those of you listening, the great brothers coming into the UFC, but I think it's only a matter of time before we see that thin veil of bullshit fall and one of them turn out to actually be a potentially capable fighter, and the other one just kind of riding on the coattails of the fact that they're brothers and they're in, you know, the UFC together and they're both spectacular. No. I don't think that's the case. And I think Benoit Saint Denis is one of those dudes who's been flying under a lot of people's radar because he had a couple of rough goes. But if you look at his resume overall, that dude's got some potential in him for real. And I feel like with all the hype that Bonfils tend to bring, if he can step in this weekend and do work, he can steal that fucking thunder and run away with it, man. I think this could be a Bonfim moment to lose, essentially. But I agree, it's not getting enough hype either way.
Well, definitely. And it could go the other way because Benoit Saint Denis is not a walk in the park for anybody. He's not what we've seen out of him. I'm not saying he's a world breaker, but
right,
he's put on some very solid fights in the UFC so far.
Yeah, I agree. So with that then, I'll flip that coin over to the proverbial other side of it here. We know that there are plenty of fights on this fucking card that people will not shut the fuck up about. So for that one, which one in your opinion is the one that is getting overhyped, that people are just trying to throw so much fucking light to that we know, wink, wink, isn't going to be what they think it's going to be?
Muted. I'm over here muted. It's just obviously a rough fucking day. I'm gonna say I'm not gonna pick the low-hanging fruit that everyone thinks I'm going to pick because, well, it's fucking obvious. But I'm going to go on a route that I've seen way too fucking much of already, and that's fucking Yana Santos and Carol Rosas. That's a fish flop to me. It's fucking terrible. There's nothing worth watching in that. Yes, Carol Rosa's carrying the weight of the featherweight division on her shoulders, but it's Yana fucking Santos. There's no fucking point. It's a stupid fight. Yana Santos is obviously not in it. She was signing posters with her fucking baby on her lap this week.
Saw that. Okay.
Get in the fucking game. Look, as much as I appreciate being a good parent, there's something to be said for that. Hats off to you for doing the right thing, spending time with your family. But you have to, just like in any other thing, be able to separate your home and work life. The fight game is your work life. When you show up and you have an event where you need to be fucking focused in all week, that little sack of joy needs to be pawned off on daddy, who's sitting on the sidelines anyways because he pissed hot. So he may as well be taking care of the kids. However, I guess from a mother's perspective, I kind of get it because you don't want the kid to learn bad habits like cheating.
Right.
So maybe there's some leeway there for that, but I still say get a fucking nanny. Something. But it's just not worth watching. But in passing, I will mention the low-hanging fruit is the Kevin Lee fight. Because god damn it, they've been talking Kevin Lee. Ugh.
Yeah, for no, like I said earlier, for no fucking reason. Dude sat on the sidelines for 3 years. Granted, he had an injury, and I understand better than most how fucking knee injuries can be a bitch to heal from. I'm telling you, I understand better than most. That being said, I'm also not trying to argue that I should be main eventing a fucking UFC card from the sidelines either, where Kevin Lee was. So I agree. That is absolute low-hanging fruit. But I do agree. If like I mentioned in the earlier part, this fight is only happening because Carol Rosa agreed on short notice to take this fight and make it at featherweight so she didn't have to cut weight. Understandable. I think this could have absolutely been pushed out a couple weeks later. We've got room for another hangover card coming up in just 2 weeks. There's other cards that need fights more than this card needed this fight. I think it absolutely could have went over. Ironically enough, though, my overhyped fight is the one just before that. Elvis Brenner versus Guram Kutateladze. In a bit of a, I will say, weird position. I feel like it's getting more hype than it should, not because of the fight, but because of the fact that Guram Kutateladze retired and then came out of retirement and then said he might retire again, but he wasn't sure. And then decided that he wasn't going to retire and then took this fight. He was never a title contender. He was never ranked that I am aware of. And if he was, it wasn't above top 10 for damn sure. I don't understand why this fight is getting any hype to begin with, other than the fact that if Guram gets his ass whipped bad enough, he might retire again. So this one, I agree. Kevin Lee could be like, yo, we deserve to be on this card more than those guys, but they're further up the prelims where they should be. So, you know, what are you going to do? But that being said, I'm not going to say best. What I will say is one of the more interesting main and co-main events for a fight night card we've seen in a while here. Starting with the co-main, as we like to do here, Damir Ismagulov versus Grant Dawson. What do you think about this one? Because I got a very strong opinion.
What's the best way to put this? If this was any other fight card, this would not be a co-main event. I think is the nicest way to put this.
I can agree with that.
I really don't think either one of them are going to be world enders. I mean, if you look at how bad Arman Sarukian fucking beat the brakes off of Ismagulov in Ismagulov's last fight in December, there's not a whole lot that's saying he's going to get anywhere near that top of the division, whereas we've seen what Sarukian has done. Now, across from him, yeah, you've taken out fucking Mark Madsen, Jared Gordon, fucking couple other no-namers, and I'll say no-namers because that's how I feel they are, but those are the only two notable fucking wins that he has on his record. Both of these guys are fucking, for lack of better terms, mediocre at best. Like, I could see both of them ending up stuck in the gatekeeper position for the top 15. Because that's about where I think they fall as far as their fight IQs, what they bring to the table as fighters. But I don't see it being a boring fight.
Right.
Both of them will go in there and give it their all, even if they're getting their asses whipped for 15 fucking minutes. But still, not a co-main event. Like I said, I'm gonna back the Kazakh on this still. I think Ismagulov is just a touch better than Dawson. Not by a lot, but just enough to get the job done.
I can agree with that. Hot take. I think, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a bad trait, I'm just saying bad timing. I think Grant Dawson has spent this entire week trying to convince casual fans of the UFC to boycott watching the PFL because his training partners, Natan Schultz and Rafael Manafiao, have been suspended. And he doesn't agree with the performance or with the results of their performance that they agreed to and then got handed down to them. I'm not saying that is a bad trait to have. I am the first motherfucker to die bleeding on that hill. Ride for your fucking people as hard as you want them to ride for you. I am the motherfucker that will bleed to death on that hill. If you want people to ride for you, then you ride as hard for them as you want them to ride for you. This dude is clearly putting his time in the spotlight out there to shine on the situation that happened to his teammates. I respect the fuck out of that. My hat is off to you, sir. But, and I mean Sir Mix-a-Lot style, like him big, but you have got a very dangerous Kazakhstani man in front of you who wants to choke the living life out of you and will get paid extra if he does so Saturday night. And overlooking a man in that position, let alone a man in that position coming off of a loss that he really wants to erase the taste of from his mouth, is a not only dangerous but stupid position to put yourself in my opinion. Grant Dawson has a lot of hype behind him for good or bad. And to let it just get taken the fuck away from you because you'd rather talk about the bullshit that happened to your friends last week than the fight that you have coming up in 2 days is just not smart as a professional fighter, in my opinion, let alone a guy who's going up against a crazy Kazakhstani who wants to choke you.
Agreed 100%.
Yeah,
I didn't want to touch.
I don't think they're world breakers either, but given what I laid out here, I wouldn't want to fucking overlook a dude like that in that scenario.
And you know, I didn't want to touch that 10-foot pole, albeit correct. Knowing what Grant Dawson did in his last 2 outings and now he's doing this, I kind of want to see him get his ass whipped just for not focusing. And then you go, guess what? You probably could have won that fight, but you were busy focusing on what's over here. Well, this hand was over here.
Yep.
It's just a strange place to put yourself in when you've got a good bit of spotlight in this fight. I mean, I get it. You're trying to do your homies a favor, but sometimes you got to say the homies can wait. You can deal with that shit.
I absolutely commend him. I commend him for making a point to take his spotlight and shine a little bit over, but mention it and move on, dude. But that's all he's talking about.
Well, yeah.
And you can't, not right now.
If you really wanted to fucking have that focus, go out there, finish Ismagulov in spectacular fashion.
Right.
As soon as they put that mic in front of you, bam. All eyes are on you. The whole fucking fight world. That might be the time to say something.
By the way, more attention.
Your boys didn't show up, so fuck them both. Great. Friends or not, look, we've seen friends fight in the UFC, and they fight hard.
Go, yeah.
That shit, fuckery. Excuse me.
Yeah, I agree.
It's okay to die on a hill for your boys, but they got to be willing to die too, and they obviously were not.
Exactly. So, that being said, that will bring us to the name de marquee, the reason for the season, the poster faces for Saturday evening. Sean Strickland versus SlowBMagomedov. I'm not saying his full name, it's just long. Sean Strickland versus SlowBMagomedov. Not necessarily what most people would have picked for your first choice at a main event. Also not something you can necessarily sneeze at, in my opinion here. An interesting matchup all the way around. So I'm curious what your take is on this very unique main event matchup we've got Saturday night.
What's the nicest way to put this? This is what happens when you put your bread in the toaster. You forget that you had it on higher for something different. And the smoke alarm starts going off. And your last option, because it was your last slice of bread, you have to scrape the burn off into the trash can. Everybody has to have done this at least once, so you have to understand this analogy. You're still going to eat that fucking bread because it's that last fucking piece. but you're not going to be happy about it. And it doesn't matter how much scraping you do, it's still going to be shit. This is where we're at. You have Sean Strickland, who, to his credit, an exciting fighter, does stupid shit in training, like spars 2 versus 1, where one of those guys is Chris fucking Action Man Curtis. It's kind of fucking crazy if you're asking me, but hey. And then you, Mr. Magomedov over there. I don't even know where to fucking go with this. Like, how is this a main event? To be honest, I'll say it. Put Ariana Lipsky and Melissa Gatto as the fucking main event. You're going to sell just as much as you are with Sean Strickland. Today sell just as much as Sean Strickland. Now, the caveat to this, it is in the Apex Center. So, there is a very good possibility of some decent sound bites out of Sean Strickland talking his way through the fight. And I say decent because a lot smaller crowd, so sometimes you can hear what they're saying to each other. It's not Rona small, but it's enough to where
The mic's still to pick up a little.
You'll still be able to pick up some things. And God knows we've heard some things on the mics lately, even in packed events, knowing it's a lot more of an intimate event, smaller cage. We're going to get a listen to Sean Strickland run his fucking mouth. And I'll say this. I've noticed the fights where he's not running his mouth, he gets his ass kicked. He needs to go back to talking shit. When he's in that cage, he talks shit. It's all but over for Magomedov. If he doesn't, Magomedov's going to beat him. And Strickland is going to go off into obscurity where, to be honest, I think he's headed. As much as I hate to say it, because I do enjoy listening to him talk shit while he fights. He's fucking funny. He might not be the outside of the octagon, not the best person in the world. But god damn it, when he's in the octagon, it's a treat to listen to. It's fucking ridiculous. So, like I said, it's fucking burnt toast. That's what this main event is. It's burnt toast before we get something decent next weekend.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that for sure. I heard a very unique analogy this afternoon that I think describes this situation of the main event very well. This is Sean Strickland's UFC driver's license exam. If he passes this test successfully, the odds are DDP and Whitaker are going to beat the shit out of each other one way or another, whether one of them just dominates or it's a fucking war. They're both going to end up likely getting hurt in that match. The odds of either of them being able realistically to put on a healthy competitive competition for the belt against Adesanya 2 months later in Australia is very fucking slim. But if Sean Strickland comes out here in the first week of July, whether he gets hurt or not, he puts himself in the top 5 of the division and is one of the only people in that list who has not fought Israel Adesanya. He will also be one of the only people in the top 5 who will be healthy by the time September rolls around and there needs to be a title fight for the middleweight belt in Sydney. Like it or not, if Strickland puts on a Sean Strickland classic performance against Magomedov this weekend, he could put himself in the UFC middleweight driver's seat because odds are DDP and Whitaker are going to hurt each other and they're going to need somebody shorter than they will be able to produce to fight for that belt afterwards. We know the mouth is there. We know the feud between Izzy and Strickland with the fingernails and the anime comments. That beef is there. They don't have to build it. It's already ready to go. With a good win this weekend, he puts himself in the fucking perfect position to angle for that September title fight without having to fight any of the top 5 guys ahead of him, something that guys in other divisions are literally begging for that chance to do the same fucking thing. And here we've got Strickland literally about to stumble his fucking way forward into one, as long as he can get past this crazy motherfucker named Abus Magomedov.
Literally just it's like putting a 15-year-old with their temps in a NASCAR and saying all you have to do is not hit the wall, you're only turning left.
Just gotta get there. Yeah, it doesn't have to be the best performance in the world. It just has to be good. It can't be a boring 5-round fucking fight. It just has to be a good, classic, talk some shit, do your damn thing, Sean Strickland performance we have seen him do. We know that he is capable of doing. And if he goes out and does that this weekend, he could put himself in the UFC middleweight driver's seat, realistically. Now, obviously, this is MMA. Nothing's guaranteed. DDP could drop Whitaker in one fucking punch and then be absolutely ready, and we know he's getting the shot in that case. Could go the other way around as well, because Bobby Knuckles don't fucking play. There's a million things that could happen, but a lot of what potentially could unfold this fall could rely on how the main event plays out in the Apex Saturday night. Weird as it might be, I think that's an interesting thing to have to fucking look forward to. But that is what we've got for this UFC Vegas 76 card for this weekend of punchy, kicky goodness. First and foremost, thank you to everyone tuned in, whether you are here on youtube.com/I'mNoJoe, catching us Thursday nights, 9:30 p.m.-ish, live here in person, or you are catching this in the all audio format a week later over on anchor.fm/I'mNoJoe for your podcast consumption platform of choice. Either way, we appreciate you. If you like what we're doing around here, please thumbs up, subscribe, and make sure your notifications are turned on so you don't miss an episode of this thing, and share it with a friend. We'd like to help them along too. So the other side of that is, if you don't like what we've been up to, first and foremost, what the hell are you doing this deep into a podcast you didn't enjoy? Give us a thumbs down and then go fuck yourself. We won't even dispute it. That being said, when the things wrap up on Thursday night here, it's not the end of the week, because tomorrow morning, hopefully if he's alive, and most every Friday morning, those other boys here, them SlowBake fellas over on Spreaker.com/SlowBake and Contemplate, do their own podcast early in the morning. So that's probably why they're passed out now. But they do their own thing. You can catch their podcast over on Spreaker. Their links to social medias for them are down in the description, as well as along the scrolling bar at the bottom of the episodes. Here is the link to the I'm No Joe Discord server, where you can hop on, hang out, chat, shoot the shit. I try and give advanced warning to lock your picks in for Tapology so you don't forget and have to do it in 60 seconds. As well as a very own channel for them boys, the SlowBake fellas. They got their own channel on YouTube, or excuse me, on the Discord server as well. But that being said, once those boys finish up, that ain't the end of it either, because when we wrap back around to the other side of the week on Wednesday nights, 9 p.m., sometimes 9:30, depending on kids' soccer, shit gets crazy, over on the Golf T Vapes YouTube channel. You see the name right over there. That's the name of the YouTube channel. His link is also down in the description. We do a show on Wednesday evenings called The Foggy Fairway. We do everything from shooting the shit, discussing advocacy, teaching folks how to make DIY e-liquids. We're fairly fucking good at what we do, but we're also pretty damn entertaining, if I do say so myself. So you are all welcome to come by, hang out, shoot the shit with us, and have yourself a merry little evening on Wednesdays.
Fuck yeah, thank you, sir. Now, just in case anybody's forgot, Punchy Kicky Meter does more than Punchy Kickies. He does many things. So if you're inclined to find out all of the many things that the meter does do, go click the link below, which is linktree/the meter does many things. That's going to take you to a little spot that will give you more links to all of the many things that the meter does do. All you have to do is click on the ones that tickle your fancy, and bam, you're in like Flint. Remember, just click on that one little link down below, linktree/the meter does many things, And I will say I've been on a fucking roll. This is like 8 weeks in a row with no .com in there somewhere. Fucking A. Go find out all of the things that the meter does do outside of kicky punchies.
Much appreciated, sir. So that being said, that is all that we have got for this particular episode. I will say I generally try and steer clear of being political, but in favor of the traditional closeout this evening, I do feel, in light of the Supreme Court's recent decision to disavow affirmative action, it seems a bit fucking ridiculous in the United States these days that we have to say this, but if you're not hurting anyone, mind your fucking business. Love is love. June is Pride Month. And if it ain't hurting you, don't fucking bother them either. Everyone has a right to be happy. That's what America is for, motherfucker. That's why we're celebrating next week, because we all have the right to be happy. And if you don't like that, get the fuck out. Have a great weekend.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. How do I say goodbye to what we had? The good times.